Carrion Empire. Part 2. The Shadow of Nagash.
When the age of chaos dawned, and Sigmar staged his retreat to the realm of heavens, the people of the Metallurgican Empire chose to stand their ground. Their rulers raised their ensorcelled banners, drew up the grim-eyed ranks of warriors, and prepared to give battle to any who threatened their lands. Anarchy reigned across the realms in the wake of the Battle of the Burning Skies. Sigmar and his Grand Alliance were in full retreat, their armies shattered, and the bonds of fealty broken. Hordes of Chaos worshippers and gibbering demons poured in from the realm gates across the mortal realms, many of them bursting out in the midst of populous cities and wreaking bloody havoc. Entire nations fled towards the realm gates that led to Azir, columns of refugees streaming through war-torn lands as bands of beleaguered warriors fought desperate rearguard actions to protect them. King Theodore Durenstein chose to stand and fight. Despite its size, the Metallurgican Empire only played host to 2 realm gates, and both were so heavily fortified that the Chaos invaders stood little chance of breaking through. The Empire's borders were equally well defended, while Metallurgica's standing armies, both human and Duardin, were vast. To King Theodore, the notion of flight through terrain teeming with foes towards an uncertain fate seemed insane, doubly so when one considered he would have to evacuate many thousands of loyal subjects. Yet, in truth, for all of his logical arguments, King Theodore's decision was based upon a single factor. He would not abandon the artifice engines. So vast and complex had the engines become that they sprawled through entire wings of the Palace of Miracles, the Arca Sanctum now taking up almost a quarter of the huge structure. Incorporating ensorcelled components that plumbed directly into the magic of the realms, the artifice engines could no more be disassembled and moved than they could fly away of their own volition. King Theodore was damned if he was going to abandon thousands of years of Durenstein tradition to take to his heels, and so the armies of Metallurgica dug in, and the armories of heirlooms were emptied in order to equip every hero in the land. One after another, the warbands of Chaos came and were hurled back. Then came Nagash. Even as the forces of Chaos pushed into the mortal realms, the God King Sigmar was betrayed by Nagash, Supreme Lord of the Undead. In retaliation, Sigmar pursued the great necromancer across Shaiish with a berserker fury. Nagash stayed a step ahead of his erstwhile ally, however, and as he fled, he sought ways to gain an advantage over Sigmar. It was during this time that Nagash's vast and terrible intellect turned to the armies of Metallurgica and the incredible magical artifacts he had seen them wield. With such weapons and armour in the hands of his Mortarchs, White Kings, and Revenant Lords, Nagash would gain a powerful advantage over any rival deity who came against him. The great necromancer weaves his webs over millennia, identifying advantages and predicting threats that may not come to pass for centuries. Nagash had long ago marked the location of Metallurgica within Shamon, lest he ever need to take its ensorcelled bounty for his own. His agents had crept into the dark corners of that mighty empire, as they had into so many others. Now, as Nagash stretched out his claw to take that which he desired, those agents sprang into action. Hidden covens of necromancers wrought dark rituals in basements and mausoleums. Mass graves, hidden in the deepest mine workings, stirred as corpses slithered from them like giant maggots. Tombs long ago engraved with hidden pentagrams shuddered and smoked as screaming swarms of geists poured from within. Over the course of a single night, huge armies of the undead massed within the Metallurgican Empire's borders and marched upon its surprised defenders. The city of Obsidian fell to a swarming mass of dead walkers and zombified gargants who devoured its screaming protectors and spilled out into the farmlands beyond. Iron Reach was besieged from within and without, Dwarden and human, fighting in ever-constricting circles against overwhelming hordes of the dead. Worse, from the Empire's many mine workings and arcane factories, hidden cults of cannibals and lunatics emerged to fall upon civilian and warrior alike. How long these broods of twisted monsters had existed amongst the Empire's populace was unclear, but as their rampages spread, their vast numbers could not be denied, and they laid claim to many areas. King Theodore struck back with impunity. The Palace of Miracles disgorged its phalanxes of warrior smiths and artisan lords, and the dead were hurled back on every front. Yet the foes within the Empire's borders were only the first wave of attackers dispatched by Nagash. Even as Metallurgican forces were diverted to crush the internal threats, fresh hordes of geists and animate skeletons appeared on every border. Day by day, week by week, cities fell, and lands were lost as new armies of the dead marched against the Metallurgican Empire. Its defenders fought skillfully and tirelessly, but in the face of so many incursions, they were slowly pushed back to the very gates of the capital, Durenberg. King Theodore realized that his forces were outnumbered. They may yet win every battle, yet against the endless onslaught of the dead, they would eventually lose the war. He thus sought a way to weaken the enemy, to deal a blow so devastating that Nagash would relent altogether. For this, he turned to an ancient heirloom, known as the Mirror of Distant Things. The legends of this time do not state how the artifact worked. It is known only that Theodore's eldest nephew, Sir Borean, successfully used it to steal one of the sacred books of Nagash from his uncle. Hastening to the Archisanctum with his grim prize, King Theodore made to hurl the book into the chamber's churning reality forge. In that moment of triumph, he awoke the monstrous curse within the tome, and in doing so lost the war and damned his people at a single stroke. Suddenly paralyzed, the king could only watch as an apparition of the great necromancer appeared within the Archisanctum and plucked the cursed book from his frozen hands. It was the final sane moment of Theodore's life. Nagash reached out one bony hand and laid a malediction of cannibalistic madness upon the last king of Metallurgica. Abhorrent vampirism, the dreaded boon of Usharan, claimed first Theodore, and then, through him, every last one of his subjects. So fell Metallurgica, its folk reduced in an instant to degenerate cannibals. The centuries unravelled before them as they laboured under the insane delusion that they had in fact defeated Nagash, and continued as they were. The last Duardin of Kars Nagrand was butchered in the halls by swarms of their former comrades. The cities mouldered and collapsed. In this new and terrible age, the artifice engines were fed not finely measured magical powders and refined ores, but gobbets of flesh and bone, tangles of sinew, and rotted grave mulch. At last, after hundreds of years of madness, they were all but seized. The lands themselves subsided as frenzied ghoul-packs burrowed the mine workings further and further afield. The Palace of Miracles sank slowly into its own enormous grave, and through the ruins scuttled abhorrent Archregent Theodore and his devolved people, preying upon all who strayed into their revolting domain.